Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Francis. I'm your friendly neighborhood bee expert. I have a bachelor's of science degree in entomology from University of Delaware. Some of you may have heard of Doug Talamy, who has gotten pretty big in gardening circles in the region. I had him as a professor who he kind of helped put me along this path. I recently got my master's degree in integrative biology down in Georgia from Kennesaw State University, studying wild bees and climate change. I've been pursuing a passion studying wild bees the last few years now. And I'm currently working for the National Wildlife Federation and also the USGS Bee Inventory Monitoring Lab in Laurel on pollinator conservation. I want to address too, first of all, as Pat said, I'm available to give workshops and talks. I would love to be able to do that and expand my outreach potential in the area. But I do want to be clear, when I talk about bees, most people, their minds jump to these, which are honeybees, of course, and these are not the bees that I'm talking about when I talk about wild bees. What I am talking about are these guys, which number around 400 species in Maryland. Our wild bees are incredibly diverse and incredibly important for our local environment. They pollinate all kinds of things, including many of our crops and the things you all are gardening, whether you know about it or not. There's just an awful lot to talk about with them. And aside from their diversity and trying to show people things like these amazing green sweat bees we have in our area or all kinds of other things, I'm also happy to share with people ID tips, for example, how to differentiate bumblebees and carpenter bees, or other aspects of bee biology, like how to differentiate males versus females, other things that are add some value to being able to go around a garden and be able to see this amazing diversity of life around this, but also these are the practical purposes of this as well. Also, I'm happy to talk about pollinator diversity in general. There's much more than just bees that are insect pollinators in our environment that are really critical for providing pollination services, like our amazing diversity of butterflies, of which we have over 150 different species in Maryland. So happy to talk about all of this and more. If this interests you, I'd be happy to give a formal presentation to any of the communities that you're a part of. Also, this is a personal favorite activity of mine. Once the flowers in spring start really blooming, I would be happy to lead what I like to call a pollinator safari, sort of a tour of your gardens where I can take people out and actually show them live specimens. And I think that if you're really trying to learn about pollinator diversity and be able to, differentiate the different kinds of pollinators there are, there's no better way to do that than having an expert point them out to you. If you are interested in any of this, having me give a presentation and or some sort of like a tour of your garden space, you can email me at frmullan@gmail.com, which Patrick can also give to you. Excuse me?
I think that was just an echo.
Oh, okay. I'm good. All right. You can email me here. And just to be transparent, I plan to use a sliding scale type of model for fees for my services, which I'll be happy to discuss more with any of you if you start a dialogue with me. I want my content to be accessible to diverse audiences. So I recognize that, but of course I also want to be fairly compensated for my time. So that's my intention here. But I'm really passionate about sharing this with people. I hope I could get the chance to work with all of you. I'd be very excited to do that. If you have any questions, I can take them now.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
I'm looking at planting a lot of milkweed this year to increase bee population. We had a bee group come over from Harford Road about 5-6 years ago, and they said there were about 20 different types of bees. They were so small, I was unaware that they're there, but they found them. But so I didn't see as many big bees the larger bees last couple of years, and I'm becoming concerned. So I would like, perhaps to have you come and look at our garden, if nothing else, and maybe do a seminar with one of our youth groups. But my real question is, will milkweed actually increase the amount of pollinators in our garden?
If you have native milkweed, which I think is the one that's most typically planted around here, then yeah, that's an excellent pollinator plant. A bunch of our natives rely on native milkweeds for their pollen for their young and nectar. So yeah, that should be helpful. There's a bunch of factors that have been causing pollinator declines in recent years, and providing food and resources for pollinators is really important in trying to boost their populations, but sometimes there's other factors that can get in the way. So
Peggy has her hand raised, and then Liz.
Thank you. Francis, 2 questions. One is, I'm more familiar with the term native bees. And why are you using the term wild bees? Are they different? Or wild bees not all native?
Exactly. Yeah. I sometimes use the terms interchangeably. The majority of the wild bees in Maryland are in fact native. However, particularly in Baltimore and other big urban centers, there have become several non-native but still wild species of bees that are quite common.
Okay.
So wild is just a bit more inclusive. Yeah.
Thank you. And in response to the gentleman who just had his question about milkweed, it's a fantastic attractor to bees, but it's only during a certain time of the year. So as a committee member of the Pollinator Committee of Master Gardeners of Baltimore City, I will encourage you to look at other pollinator species that will grow throughout the year, so that you can support our pollinators, not just say you'll see your native milkweed bloom approximately in June, beginning of June around here. It might be earlier now, but you'll want to include, and I'm sorry, Francis, if you were going to go into this, but you also want to include other things that are earlier and later than that wonderful milkweed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And there's a plethora of gorgeous native flowering plants that bloom across the whole year. So, there's a lot of options you can choose from to plant.
Liz, I believe you had a question.
Hey, Francis, thank you so much for your talk. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to how we can build habitat besides just having pollinator-friendly plants in our garden. If having those bee boxes is good with all the little holes in them, and if you could talk about the effects of neonicotinoids that people are spraying in their gardens and pesticides on wild bees. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, pesticides in general are not great. There's been a bunch of studies in the last decade plus that have shown that neonicotinoids in particular are really harmful to bumblebee populations. So it's definitely recommended you don't use those. Bumblebees are among the most threatened wild bees we have. So yeah, limit pesticide use as much as possible if you want to protect wild bees. With habitat, so 70% of our native bees or wild bees are actually ground nesters. They're even more different. Yeah, they're different from honeybees in many ways, but most of them actually live completely solitary lives. There is like no hive or anything for most of the species you see on the screen here, and they just have holes in the ground. So as far as habitat goes, for 70% of them, they need easily accessible ground space. So not just a giant mat of lawn, which they can't get through. So you need to have native flowering plants which provide them food. They need to have ground space around those plants that they can easily dig into. The 30% that are not ground nesters also need cavities like twigs and stuff, which leads to the bee hotels you just brought up. So bee hotels are a great way to provide that habitat for the stem or like twig nesters. Although one needs to be careful with bee hotels that you regularly clean them. You should be changing out the stems every season, because what happens is that if the same stems are kept in there year after year, then it allows for like pathogens, diseases, or parasites to colonize the stems, and then they'll latch onto the bees and give a bunch of sicknesses to the bee population, which would not be good. So.
Yeah, thanks for that, including that piece, Francis. And that was a big part of your earlier presentation. That was like news to me, and I actually have to clean my own bee hotel. So, guys, if there are any, sort of like one final crash question, otherwise we're going to have to move on to full.
What is a bee hotel?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have a photo here to show you, but it's a bee hotel. Very simply, is essentially just a collection of hollowed out stems,
Okay.
which it could literally just be like a whole bundle of stems that you put some, like a wire around to keep them together and hang it somewhere. Some people like to get fancy and make like what looks like a cute little house that holds all the stems, which is like kind of an artistic piece for your garden. But the stems, the bees that nest in stems will go into the stem and lay a whole bunch of eggs inside of it. So it eventually becomes a hotel for all the bees that are nesting in there.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, appreciate you, Francis. I think without further ado, we'll pass it on to Full. They are a really interesting group. They are putting together they have put together a app that helps gardeners do all kinds of very cool things. And we're really interested in what they do. And we think a number of you will be interested. And so I will pass to Abby to provide a presentation on their work.
Righty. Hi, everyone. My name is Abby. I work with Full Community Gardens, and we are a company that's focused on tackling food insecurity with the use of community gardens. And so we work with a variety of companies and individuals to help establish and manage community gardens. We provide everything from seeds, storage sheds, soil irrigation system, compost bins, everything, as well as access to our app. We also have carbon sensors that we put in the soil to help get back carbon credits, which we'll talk more about when I pass it over to Tom. So we're focused really on tackling food insecurity. We have a for-profit branch of our company, and then we also have a nonprofit where we also help raise funds for a variety of things pertaining to the garden. We're partnering with some companies to help raise funds for land grants and a bunch of other stuff that we're also going to go more into detail with. So I'm going to hand this over to Tom and let him just explain more about what we're all about.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Abby. I will, if you want to let me, do I have the ability to share my screen? Let me know if you guys can see that. Is not what I wanted. Wait, can you see that?
Yep. You can see it.
Like an app? Okay, cool. So we do all of those wonderful things that Abby discussed, and at the root of it, we've created an app to help with management. So if you have an existing community garden or green space, one of the things that we noticed when we started getting into this initiative was the administrative side of the gardens can be a real pain point. Seemed like most folks were using things like Facebook groups or Excel and stuff like that. And so we've created this to hopefully ease that burden a little bit. So I'll run through this real quick, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about what we do at Full. Essentially, when you come into the app, it's just like any other app. You sign in and get registered, and I'll spare you guys all of that. But this is the main home screen that you come into once you're signed in. And what this allows you to do is essentially make the garden completely through the app. And so you have your membership, and you can set up a calendar, and this every garden has an admin, and so the admin can come in and set these events so that you guys can manage the workforce and whoever's coming to volunteer. And when you're looking at a specific event, you can see who's involved, who's planning on coming, and if you want to sign up, you can sign up for an event. So the feedback we've gotten so far is that the admin would come in and sort of lay out the schedule for the week, and then the volunteers sign up and they can see who's coming when, and it makes it a little bit easier if they need to reach out and find people to cover, or if they have a lot of people, they just basically gives them insight into everything that's happening. One of the nice features about it is we have it set up where all right, sorry. This may apply to some, but not all, but we have a feature where you can come in and you can decide, you can lay out a bunch of items that you want to grow in the coming growing season, and then you can have the membership vote on it. And we use ranked choice voting. So if you want to democratize what's going to get grown amongst all the people that are in your garden, then you can do that. You don't have to do that, but you can if you want to. It's just kind of a fun feature that everybody seems to have enjoyed so far. And then we are going to have an education portion of the app where if you have questions, you can go in and pose the question and you'll get answers back. This will become more robust as we grow and develop. But just as a good example, we're working with a community garden in Denver, and they're going to be also helping us with expertise on how to grow things above a certain, when you're so far above sea level, because things change completely when you get to 1,000 feet above sea level versus if you're down low. And so this will end up being an incredibly valuable resource as it gets developed out, where you can come in and get questions. And if your answers don't come up immediately, we will go and find the answer for you. So we hope that this ends up being extremely helpful for everybody. And then there's an entire messaging section. So everybody that's in your garden will show up in your messaging section. So you can communicate with anybody you want to talk to. It works just like your average messaging on any phone that you use now. And you can also do group messaging. And so if you want to be an admin, you click the star there, and I'll give you a sneak peek at what the admin screen looks like. So as an admin, sometimes you have multiple admins on one, or you have one admin managing multiple gardens. Either way, we can make it work. And so if I'm an admin managing multiple, and I go to my admin screen, all of my gardens are going to pop up. And so they're each treated independently. So I can drop into that specific garden. I can see who's a member of that garden. I can look at the calendar. And unlike a regular user, I have the ability as an admin to add events. And so when you add an event, you put the event name, the date, start time. You can put any descriptions, pictures, make it look pretty. I won't fill all of that out. I'll save us the time, and it's already pre-filled. So once you create the event, it gives you a chance to see what you've created. This is how it's going to look when you put it out there. You have the option to notify all of the members of the garden when you set the event, or you can confirm and message people specifically. And sort of the differentiating factor with this, the feedback we've gotten is, if you're putting in your routine stuff for the week, you don't necessarily need to message all the members. They're going to know to go in and look. But if you're having a special event or a social event at your garden or your green space, then you can message all of the members and make sure that they know it's coming up, and kind of help boost numbers. And so that is a really fast walkthrough of the app, and I'll stop sharing now and come back. Before I go into anything else, do you guys have any quick questions about the app?
I do. I'm sorry. Where would we find this app? I was just looking for it briefly.
Okay, so we are.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. We are developing the app right now, and we have the app available. It's set up as a progressive web app, which means you download it directly from us. It's not in the app stores. And the reason it's not in the app stores is because Apple really doesn't like it when you're making changes. They only want your finished product. And so where we're at right now is we're working with gardens and we're onboarding people, and we want their input, because at the end of the day, we want this to be the most useful tool that you can possibly have. So if you join the app and you start working with us and you have suggestions for what if we tweak this or what if we add that, we want that feedback. We want to make those changes. So until we get through that period where we're really comfortable, we're not going to drop it into the App Store, because we don't want to risk the ire of Apple and getting kicked out. They're not very friendly, I'm afraid.
Sounds about right. I believe Liz had a hand first.
Thank you for sharing, Tom. I was curious what the price point of your app is. Like, is it going to be accessible for really small
Yes.
community gardens?
So basically, if you're up to an acre, it's $25 a quarter. So we don't want it to be super expensive. If you have more than an acre, basically it's $25 an acre per quarter. And if that presents a challenge, we do have the and basically help anybody that's on the app. So we could conceivably, if we know that there's a hardship, we can go and raise the money through the foundation to cover the access fee. But then that also, as you know, most of you are nonprofits, that also extends into expansions. If you guys want fencing for one of your gardens, or you want to add beds to your garden, instead of having to foot that bill yourself, we can get our foundation involved and we can help raise the money for that. And so that's how all that ties together, because we really didn't want money to be a blockade in the ability to grow and create gardens and feed people.
And also, just for your reference, part of what we're trying to figure out as Baltimore Green Space is, does it make sense to kind of like all go in together and figure out it out in that way for the sites that we protect?
Yeah, I think it's, we would set up each site as its own garden. And essentially the process is, if you're interested, then we put together the parameters of the agreement.
Tom, I was more telling for them, because we've already had this conversation. They don't know as site leaders, that we're just trying to get a gauge on how you guys as site leaders, how many of you might be interested, whether you think this might be useful. So that's part of what Patrick's doing here today, is going to kind of gauge your interest.
Cool. Hey, Marcia, I think you were up next.
Yeah, I was just curious from the perspective of like managing or how people get added into gardens, particularly if someone's a volunteer and maybe irregularly volunteers at like one garden or wants to volunteer in different community gardens. Like, how's that process type of work?
So when that volunteer downloads and signs up for the app, they'll be asked to select a garden. And the only gardens that will be accessible to them will be the ones that are in their area, so they can't, accidentally volunteer for Garden Denver. So we get the garden set up first in the app, and then we bring the volunteers in. Okay. And they sign up, they select the garden, and then as an admin, you accept them into the garden. And so if you have a wait list, we can manage your wait list for you. And so you'll be able to see who you have registered and accepted and active, but then you'll also have your wait list. If people leave, you can pull people out, drop people in, that kind of thing. And a volunteer can belong to more than one garden as long as the admin accepts them in. Right on. Helene?
That actually kind of answered one of my questions, was how do you get your gardeners connected? But they would, so we essentially accept them. They go through you in a sense, and then we would accept them. Okay. So conceivably, I guess a person could sign up for the garden, but never really show up too. We could accept them, but I guess so. Okay.
Correct.
But
and then it'll be up to you as an admin how you want to deal with that. If there's somebody that should be volunteering and they're not, you have the ability to remove them from the garden, and however you want to do that, talk to them or whatever, but you have the ability to remove them from the garden. And also the app itself will underset. So if someone we can set the parameters for your garden where, let's say it's set up that everybody has to volunteer once a month. If we go in a month and any of the users haven't volunteered, we can have it automatically send them a notification that says, hey, you haven't checked in with the garden in the last month. Maybe you should check in and sign up for something, something friendly, but that little nudge. And so we have some automated stuff to help with that, but then manually you have full control over who's in the garden and who you accept and who you push and that kind of thing. And then of course, you can message people directly in the app and say, hey, can you sign up for something? You haven't signed up for anything in a while.
Right. Okay. I'm just thinking about, so Gardner would only be connected through it if they choose to download the app, I guess, at some point, correct?
Correct.
Or apply.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So ideally, if you as a garden choose to accept using the app for your admin, all of your volunteers will download the app and sign up through the app. And that way everybody is fully bought in.
Okay.
We haven't found that to be a challenge yet. But I mean, you never know. There could be some folks that have no interest in using their phones, and I totally get that, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Lowell, I believe you're up.
Yes, you've talked about the Apple's App Store. Is this also available on Android phones?
Yes, it'll be fully available on Apple and Android. And as a progressive web app, it can be downloaded to any phone or any computer now as it exists. But we will be dropping it into both the Google Play Store and the App Store once we go through this period of getting it kind of fine-tuned with our participating gardens.
So it can be run on a desktop computer?
Yeah, sure.
Right on. Well, one of the, I guess he's actually a forest manager. He asked, how is this different, easier, or better than Basecamp or similar applications?
That's a good question. I haven't used Basecamp. I think that it really, in that regard, we are specifically geared for gardens. So I don't know enough about Basecamp to compare the two, to be honest, but we're geared specifically for gardens, and that is the sole focus. So you're not trying to make something else fit what you're doing. This is already a fit, but if you already have an effective solution, then I mean, obviously you should go with that. We've just found that most folks are struggling on the admin side right now.
Got it. Tom, is there more you're going to present, or should we ask more questions, or are we?
No, go ahead and ask more questions. I really kind of wanted to leave it open-ended because we tend to get a lot of questions. So I wanted to give everybody a glimpse of the app, but not, bore them to tears by spending too much time on it. And yeah, so just a couple of things, and I think we touched on it, but just Liz, did you have a question?
You have another question? I thought you just kept your hand
I do. I have another question. I'm sorry. I was curious if you have a way within the app of sharing recipes of like what's currently like booming in the garden, like great zucchini dips or something.
So you can share it. You can share it within your garden, but sharing from garden to garden, we don't have set up yet, but we actually have talked about that. Like that is going to be an add-on, like version 2 of the app is going to include some kind of recipe sharing, because that's just way too popular not to have. And I mean, that could be its own thing. But I would like to talk about the next iteration of the app in the summer. That's going to be incorporating. And so what that's going to entail is the ability for you to go to the marketplace, and it'll serve two purposes. One, you'll be able to go there and there'll be vendors on there that you can purchase from, seeds, tools, whatever you need. It'll be an open-ended marketplace where we'll have vendors come in and buy things. And so just to put that in, bring it full circle, let's say we work together and we raise $2,500 for your garden. We would then apply $2,500 to your account that you could go and spend in the marketplace, and you could buy all the supplies that you need for the growing season or for whatever project you got. Side of that is if you have overabundance, or if you make something from what you've grown and you want to sell it, you'll be able to sell it on the marketplace. Because one of the things that we want to try to do is create this marketplace so all of these gardens could be completely self-sustaining and not necessarily have to rely wholly on donations. And so we're working with one group, I will say Oklahoma, but I might be wrong, But they
Fayetteville, Arkansas.
currently, they grow a lot of fruit and they preserves. Where?
Fayetteville, Arkansas, New Beginnings. They make hot
Fayetteville, there you go. So
Yep.
they grow preserves. So they're waiting for the next iteration, because they want to be able to sell their preserves on the marketplace to, local residents and restaurants, farm to table restaurants, and then that now becomes a revenue generator for their garden.
Right on.
Mhm.
I'm gonna put up, I guess I'll do a poll to gauge interest and launch this poll. So yeah, feel free to fill it out.
Click yes. Am I allowed to vote, or is that tacky?
It is tacky, Tom.
but live your best life.
There was a question
There's
about.
a question in the chat about, can you create or share a garden map within the app?
No, but that is exactly the kind of feedback that we want right now, because if that makes sense, then that is certainly something that we can, I'm sure that we can attach it as a PDF so that if you join the garden, then that would be downloadable so that you could look at it. But that's exactly why we're not in the App Store yet, is because we hadn't thought of that, but that sounds like a great idea and it would be really easy to incorporate. So that would be a change that we would want to make, that we could sort of work through with you guys to make sure that the app is doing everything that you want it to do.
Yeah, I think that's important, because if you're talking about like different areas of the garden,
Yeah.
especially relating to task lists, which I know is a part of this,
Yes,
I think that would make sense, especially, gardeners who just show up, once a week to do a task,
Yep. Yeah, we can definitely make that happen. I mean, I don't think that seems like a pretty easy lift. I think we could incorporate that pretty easily.
Yeah.
I mean, and another thing that I would say, Tom, is that a lot of our garden leaders have figured out lots of ways to manage their folks that I think would be easily translatable to an app, but they're like using whiteboards and, different like movable pieces on, whiteboards or other such things. And they might be able to, like, talking to them would just probably give you some more ideas of how to build this out really well.
Yeah, that would be lovely, because that definitely is something that, and we're kind of waiting for that feedback so that we can figure out what integrations we want to make, so that if we're being used in tandem with something else, that they're able to talk to each other, or we can find the easiest way to kind of marry those things together.
Yeah, because Anthony is saying sharing planting calendars, if not included already, would be good. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great.
Cool. I think, if we don't have any more questions, I feel like we definitely have interest and we definitely have something to follow up on, so we can, yes, the recording can be available.
I think I have one question.
All right, Michael.
I'm wondering if, Francis, that it could be global. You could have options within, not just one-on-one with your garden, but global within BGS, Baltimore Green Space, or within targeted subgroups, so that if you're interested in communicating with certain types of gardens or certain types of forest groups, or with the community as whole, and asking questions, have you considered that sort of thing?
Yeah, and I think that is probably going to reside mostly on social media. We do have a marketing team, and we have we're trying to build a strong social media presence. And so, as we bring on partners, we're doing a lot of announcing. We want to help with volunteer acquisition. And so, yeah, I definitely think, we're trying to build a full community. It's not just about, having one garden and sort of keeping it segregated within itself. And, that cross communication is so valuable. We definitely want to enable that to happen. And so the real question now is that driven more on social media, or is that going to be driven in the app? And the answer is it will definitely be driven in the app because you'll have the ability to communicate outside of your garden. But yeah, I mean, we want to build.
I think you're not quite understanding me.
Okay,
What I'm driving at is Baltimore Green Space is think of it as a unit, a global unit with subsets. And so those subsets, some of them intersect, some do not, some want to talk to the whole. And if you're setting up within Baltimore Green Space, let's say whatever number KD it is of subsets, then gardens and forests and whatever. And if you're targeting it individually instead of within our universe, what good is it to us if we're trying to build a stronger Baltimore community using just your app? Why not just go with a social media thing that is not targeting our specific concerns and questions, which it looks like your app can do?
Yeah, so I think the solution for that would be to set up Baltimore Green Space as sort of a master account where all of the individuals would fall under that. So the ability to communicate within Baltimore Green Space would be there, whether it's them communicating out to specific groups or all of the gardens at once, or if it's cross communication between the gardens, we would definitely integrate that into the app so that that communication is there.
Thank you very much. That's more specific to what I was thinking. Thank you.
Okay.
Cool. How are we feeling? Good. All right, cool. I think that's good, Tom. And I think we'll definitely have some follow-up for you. Really appreciate you coming out. All of you guys, Abby and Allison, and excited for the prospect of making something happen.
That's what. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to getting to know you guys and seeing what we can do to help. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. So moving on. Second. So I am going to be introducing you all to session plans. And it's not going to be a big thing, but basically, I'll just pull up the presentation. Can everybody see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. So as an organization, we're, over a decade and going strong. And we've gotten to the point with where the organization is, where we've had a lot of site leaders doing this work for a long time. So what we've noticed is when some of the site leaders leave, they're taking with them a wealth of knowledge, and it's hard to replace. And so we've been thinking a lot and working with some of our site leaders and our board and other partners to try and create a more sustainable system of gardening. So I want to talk a little bit about some of our thoughts. So again, we're looking to create systems that ensure long-term sustainability. Again, like I said, site leaders take their knowledge with them. So we have created a model, right? Again, here's Jan, one of our longest serving site leaders. Now, Jan has been at this a long time. Jan knows the garden like the back of her hand, as does her husband, Kurt. So say they get an idea, look, we're tapped out and we're gardening. Jamaica looks nice. They move down there. They take that knowledge with them. So that's tough. So we have worked with a number of gardens to put plans forth that really break down all the tasks, all the different areas of the garden, all the different specific things you need to do to keep the garden running. so that knowledge can be passed down. And we've worked with a few sites, and again, Upper Fells Point Community Garden and Jan have volunteered to be the next ones up in helping us really solidify this model. But again, it's something we want to do for all our sites for the purposes of sustainability and for the purposes of passing down communal knowledge from our site leaders. So that's one of the initiatives we're working on to make sure our gardens, our protected sites are working well for years to come. And we really look forward to continuing to work with you all on this. And, that's what we have.
This is a great idea. It's a shame that we don't do more succession planning in so many other areas of our lives. Because this, you lose a boss, you lose all that knowledge that they took with them. You lose your neighborhood association leader, that stuff is gone. You got to start all over again. So this is a great idea.
Sure. Well, glad to have your support. And again, glad to work with you guys. We're not doing it to you, we're doing it with you. So yeah, we really appreciate your help in this matter. And we've done it with a few sites, and we are hopefully, maybe in the next year we'll have, I think that's a reasonable goal to have done it with all the protected spaces. And we believe it'll be something that will really help us for years to come. But these are the kind of initiatives and ideas we're thinking about. Again, we've been at this for some time. A lot of our gardens are, 5 years or older in protected in the trust, and we want to make sure that this is a long-term thing we're doing here. So cool.
Let's see. How would you do that though?
We've actually, Ivy, worked on one with you. You were a big help in putting one of our first ones together. Remember, we talked about all the tasks at your garden and all the different things that need to be done. Yeah. So
who are the main leaders around the corner who know how to do the various things? Yeah, when we did that,
it's not going to be a like an actual how-to-do list, like documented so that people could read it or something.
I think that's what we're working towards. Again, I think that'll be the evolution of it to make it useful. So. Cool.
It sounds like the app, whatever they were talking about, sharing information, that would be a good way to do it too.
Sure.
Like as far as like planting times for different, all that information is available, but it was.
Yeah, I think some of the information though, there's definitely a wealth of information about how to garden. It's more about how to manage a community garden,
Yeah.
Who at the city can help you with problem X, all of a sudden your water pit caves in and you got a hole in the sidewalk and the neighbors are screaming at you, who do you call? Those kinds of
like
questions.
a resource list or something.
Yeah. Well,
problem solving.
Like somebody knows that in your neighborhood group, but if they leave,
right,
then it's not available to them.
I see. Okay, that makes sense.
And this is going to look different. This is going to look different from site to site, right? Like, we've been working with the forests on a plan like this, and what it looks like is the kind of tasks that are done weekly versus monthly versus yearly, right? But for a place that's smaller, it might just be, where are the keys to the mower? And how do you get them? Because we protect a horseshoe pit that's like a very tiny lot. And so there may be less complexity there. So Patrick, did you want to pull up one of those plans just to show an example of a really built out one?
Yeah, I think I'll show again, because we did it for a few sites, but we really just worked on the forest maintenance plan then we did a map and then the list of tasks. So I'll share this real quick, and it's pretty cool looking, at least I think. So yeah, this is what we're looking at. You all can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, again, a map of different areas of the forest, and then the list of tasks. We have them based on area. But yeah, we're getting close to fleshing this out. So yeah, this is kind of the idea of what we're thinking about. But again, especially with the forests, which are big and hard to manage, I think it's important that, different people are set to different areas and they have different tasks for those areas that they know when to do. Is it a weekly task? Is it a monthly task? So this is the kind of thing. And then obviously when you're talking about the horseshoe pit, it becomes much easier. Cool. Yeah, I think we can move on, Katie. I think
There's a question from Robin.
Oh, hey, Robin.
Hi. This is really getting me very interested in a lot of things that a lot of you gardeners are doing. And I was wondering, is there ever a time when people come around, like, can you do a tour for those of us that are kind of starting out, where we can actually take a look at what's going on with others?
We're trying to plan a garden tour for June. I gotta look at Katie reviewed some of my notes on that, so I gotta look that over, and it's in the works. So
great.
That's definitely the plan, and we'll keep you in the loop on that one.
Thank you.
Sure.
I also mentioned to the guy that manages the code map system that the city has.
Mhm.
And Katie, I think you're going to come and talk to DHCD the end of the month. I think.
Yep.
And I'm going to bring this up again, and hopefully he'll be there again, and maybe we'll get some more feedback. I don't think that the city has a layer for the map that shows where all the gardens are, which I think would be very helpful, not only to the city as they're looking at like what happened in Pigtown, right? We lost a site because nobody knew that it was a garden, apparently, at the city. They put the sign up, but they didn't say, we really want to protect our gardens. So we really need to reach out, figure out who the gardeners are, and make sure they understand what's going to happen here. Do you guys have a list of all the gardens in the city? Do you know? Is there anybody?
There is actually a map, the Project Vital map. It's called Project Vital. If you Google Project Vital map, there is a map. But also, we provide a map to the city every year. Patrick provides a QCMOS list, and Pigtown Community Garden would have been on the QCMOS list.
It was.
It must be related to the way they're using it. So we should maybe meet offline and try to talk about what that happened there and why it wasn't used.
Let's do that, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we keep tabs. I added 90 some sites in the last year, but we have around 400 sites in our database that we keep awareness on. And that's part of my job. So adding as many sites as can be, and I know there are still a decent number out there to add. And if they've been managed for over 3 years or more, we send it on to the city and they put it on their list or take it off their list actively for sale for development. So that's another thing we're doing.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. Are there any more questions on this, or I could move on to the pollinator project update? All right. So as some of the protected site leaders know, we are working on a project with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. There's a grant that we're working on together, and we are looking to expand pollinators in Baltimore, something, again, that could give Francis and friends a lot of work. But we are looking to essentially be building pollinator gardens on a lot of protected sites. We'll be working with Alex Smith, if all goes well, who does this work locally. Again, we're going to do a standard palette of plants that will be scaled up and down depending on how much size we're talking about for the garden. We'd be working with citizen scientists who will come out and record the amount of bumblebees they see. And we will have expert scientists on occasion come out and measure the total amount of pollinators they see. Again, we're hoping to create this be a multi-year project and a replicable model, and part of, again, a larger study. So a number of site leaders have expressed interest. We have made some progress on this, and please stay tuned because another round of input we'll be looking for regarding the research design. So this is really exciting work. We're really excited to be participating with Elisa Carpenter and Chris Guy on this project, and I'm feeling really positive about where this is going. So,
And Claire Massey too.
yes, and Claire. Great.
Yeah, so Patrick's already put together a big planting palette that's been vetted with a few people with Claire. So that also will be we'll be able to share that soon.
Yes. Berry
But
Circle.
that'll be part of. Go ahead. Sorry, Patrick.
No, I was reading about Berry Circle, pollinator garden, one of our green spaces. Cool. Very cool. Okay, yeah, I mean, if you have any more questions about this, reach out. DOT. Got it.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for at least a year, and we just can't we don't know what to do. You know, we need a design, we need to figure it out, and we need help with that. That'd be awesome.
Okay, cool. I mean, so again, if any of you, any of the things we talk about, if you all have questions, you can reach out to me, or interest in anything, reach out to me and we can talk individually. Again, with the pollinator project, we have, again, at this point, gone through and looked at and talked with a number of sites, protected sites that would be, I guess, eligible for this. But of course, we are willing to have further conversation, and this is still a developing project. So, and there will be also potentially more rounds of opportunity here. Cool. Anybody else? We got one hand whose hand's raised. Peggy?
Oh, it's mine. Thank you. What if you already manage a pollinator garden?
I think that's awesome work. That wouldn't be part of this project. Again, a number of our project, the sites actually do have pollinator gardens. We're talking about expanding some of them. So, and then some of them, you know, it's already like enough of the thing that's just not going to be part of this.
Any chance to get additional volunteers to be in?
So right now we can only apply this to land that we already protect.
Correct.
And yeah.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
All right, cool. Any more questions, or else we'll be moving on to the last piece on the agenda tonight. All right, Katie, I believe you're up to talk about the community needs assessment.
Okay, can you guys hear me? So one of the things that we have been asked our board by our board leaders, and just kind of we're interested in general, is kind of really understanding both how the neighbors interact with their green space and what they want to see in green spaces in their neighborhood. And so what we're writing a few proposals to do is to create a community needs assessment that is aimed at getting a sense of both how people feel about the green space that they spend time in and what it does for them, but also what the wider neighborhood, how the wider neighborhood perceives green spaces and or their local green space. And so as we so one, I wanted to let you know that that is part of what we're planning to do. And then we're planning to kind of go into going to different neighborhoods around your green spaces or around the green spaces we serve most. And then we're also hoping to get a sense of like, do they know what Baltimore Green Space does at all? So it's a multi-pronged interest there. And just like with the pollinator project, we'll be kind of checking in with you all as part of it. Well, one, we wanted to see what you think of this, how you feel about it, but also that we'll be checking in with you as it progresses of like, this is the list of questions we're planning. Would you recommend any other questions? So that's mostly kind of what I wanted to tell you about. I see that Peggy has a question. Peggy doesn't have a question. Does anybody else have questions or?
So are you going to go around and interview people, or is that what?
We are going to work with some partner agencies. Well, assuming funding comes through, we're going to be contracting with some partners to assist us with, yes, going around to neighborhoods. And actually even trying to maybe get some sense of what the youth think if there's youth in the neighborhood. So we're hoping to work with a youth leadership partner and another nonprofit partner. We've talked to both Black Yield and Urban Oasis about supporting us with this, but it depends on whether we can get the right amount of funding.
Hey, Katie, I'm wondering if it could also have a piece that is educational in asking questions, but also be about what the garden is in that community, or in my case. And
yes,
and the sub part of that would be encouraging more participation, opening up educational in terms of opportunities to be involved.
Yeah, definitely. Like, as if we're going out, we could be handing out brochures, general brochures about Baltimore Green Space, or specific brochures or pieces of, flyers about what you guys are doing right now in your site. Now, some of the sites, it will vary from site to site, because some of the sites have more involvement than they can handle or have wait lists. And that's a really great space to be in, but you still want people probably to know what you're doing in the neighborhood, even if they are not yet on the wait list. But that's exactly why we want to talk to you about this. And we're going to kind of convene you again as part of the, at various different pieces of the process.
I have a question, Katie. We recently had a new member who is a member of 4-H. Are you familiar with 4-H?
Yeah.
I mean, when I was real little, I remember 4-H. I didn't even know they still existed when she brought it up.
Oh, yeah.
She's a member of 4-H in Montgomery County. And I asked her, is there one in Baltimore? And if so, how could we become associated with them? But I really don't know a lot about them and how they could interact with something that we do as a community garden, as an environmental awareness group. Do you know any of these? Do you know much about 4-H?
I know a little bit about 4-H because of my family. I have a farm family, and they participate more in 4-H in the rural community. But this is exactly the type of thing that you can request that Patrick look into in part of his workflows. And so Patrick, sounds like we got something else for you to put on your list.
Well, and a lot of the schools are doing gardens too, which really, it's not as much 4-H has a lot. It's animal husbandry, it's gardening, it's, you know, agriculture as a business. But at least having those community gardens at the schools helps the kids understand how plants grow, what's good to eat, all that stuff. They get to play in the dirt. You know, worms are okay, all that. So I think, you know, it's hard to imagine 4-H in such an urban area because so much of 4-H is, you know, growing your own rabbits or having your own cow or whatever it is for those farm kids, which we can't always accommodate here. But so what I'm saying is the schools are picking up some of that little piece.
Okay.
As of a few years ago, there was 4-H, and you can find them through University of Maryland Extension.
Okay.
And that office was at the Reisterstown office on Reisterstown Road.
Okay.
It's definitely a growing thing and still booming out in rural areas.
Since 2011, it was in action there. The other question, oh man, now I forgot what I wanted to ask. Oh, Katie, is this what you're talking about working with communities? Is that what's happening in a few weeks in Irvington?
Yeah, I'm working with leaders there. There's a potential site that could be of interest for preservation, and there's we're just making inroads in that community and having certain discussions. And I will be doing a presentation on the preservation process at their community meeting. I get anybody can come, but I mean, really, I would say it's for folks in Irvington and again the surrounding communities who all go to those kind of meetings. But again, it's supposed to be generally for that southwest area, you know, the neighborhoods down there.
That is my neighborhood. That's my church. So the meeting is going to take place in my church. So we're advertising it through them and trying to get the other churches involved.
Well, please.
But, there's a lot of green space around there. So
yeah, please come through and if you want to talk, I'm happy to talk because you know, figuring out the green spaces and such.
Great. Yeah, well, the president of the community association, Dorothy, is probably going to be your biggest.
We've talked.
Yeah.
So there have been some conversations, but I'm happy to talk more.
Okay, I just had that question if that was what was on the agenda. Okay, thank you.
Got it. All right, excellent. So are there any other questions, concerns, things of interest? Anything anybody would like to express to the other gardeners, or a question they would like posed that they feel is especially important?
I just want to respond to what Laurie's saying in the chat. We could definitely, we'll definitely look into kind of how to make the design so that it's easy to participate in for monitoring pollinators. And so maybe we could set up a meeting to talk a little bit more about what that might look like.
Okay.
All right, now other questions, thoughts?
All right. So I guess barring any other questions, there's one last thing I want to mention. For those of you protected sites, I'll be reaching out soon, but please send me your updated volunteer list for this year. It's good for our database and our insurance and our newsletter and all that fun stuff. And just so we know what's going on with you all, please send that an email. Shout out to Megan Ruthka because she did it totally unprompted and I deeply, deeply appreciate it. Cool. Well, I'll be reaching out soon. And if there's nothing
a few more things in the chat. Baltimore Free Farm has a seed swap this Sunday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at St. Luke's Church on the Avenue. Go. St. Luke's Church is cool. And so is the Free Farm.
Awesome.
There's also going to be some pigs down in Pigtown this weekend if anybody wants to come pet them. This
Excellent.
has been abandoned, I think. It's gonna be, I think it's on Saturday. I'm not sure about that.
Okay, do you know what time?
Hang on a minute. Let me find that. Keep talking, I'll find it. Put it in the chat. Third annual National Pig Day. It's Saturday, March 4th from 1 to 3 p.m. It's real pigs from Whispering Rise Farm, an animal sanctuary. Because this is Pigtown's third annual National Pig Day.
Wait, and where exactly can you
So
head?
my understanding that it's going to be right at that corner near Suspended. So that would be Washington Boulevard and gosh, what is
this is 916 Washington Boulevard.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Hamden Hickory Street is interested in putting in a large pollinator garden. Thank you, Rebecca. Again, we can talk more regarding all these things. If you want to email me, again, please feel free. If you don't know my email, I can put it in the chat. Well, I'm sure you all have gotten plenty of emails from me, so but here it is anyway. All right, cool. Anything else? All right, well, thank you so much for being here. Again, we're trying to do these quarterly, and I like the system we got going now. Virtual for the first 3 and a potluck at the end of the year. We'll try and do them again to introduce the spring season, to wrap up the spring season, to introduce the fall season, and to wrap up the year. So that's the goal here. We really appreciate all of you coming out. Again, it's such a joy and honor to be a liaison of sorts for this wonderful garden community here in Baltimore. And thank you all again for participating, for all the effort you put in, much of it unpaid. And again, just for sharing your passion with me and the organization and with each other. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.